Have you ever opened your mouth to speak English and suddenly your brain completely shuts down, your hands start shaking, and you just forget words you've known for years?
Oh yeah, it is the ultimate betrayal by your own mind. You know the vocabulary, you understand the grammar, yet in that crucial moment, you're just left staring blankly at the person in front of you.
It is a terrible feeling. Well, in this deep dive, we are going to crack the code on exactly why your brain freezes when you try to speak English. And we will give you the exact psychological tools to stop the panic and speak smoothly, faster than another year of studying grammar.
Because the truth is, it's really not a grammar problem at all. Today, we are unpacking the 3 hidden psychological triggers behind your language anxiety and giving you 6 actionable real-world tools to beat it.
Welcome to English Learning Podcast for daily life, real conversation, and easy listening practice.
I'm just thrilled to dive into this one because this is an issue that plagues incredibly intelligent, capable people every single day.
Yeah, let's lay the groundwork for who we are actually talking to here. This deep dive is tailor-made for those of you out there who are at a B2 or C1 level. You know, you are professionals, you're university students, maybe expats living abroad.
Right, exactly.
You are anyone who feels perfectly fine reading a complex English article or, listening to an in-depth conversation or drafting a flawless email. But the second you have to actually speak it out loud, you just feel terrified.
I want to speak directly to you, the listener, right now. Your English is already significantly better than you think it is. I mean, if you're following the nuance of our conversation today, your comprehension is incredibly high.
Oh, absolutely.
It is not a lack of vocabulary that's holding you back. What is actually happening is a misfiring survival instinct. Your brain is essentially confusing a normal social conversation with a life or death threat. So I want to encourage you as we go through these tools today to practice speaking out loud. Make today the day you take control back.
That is the mission for today. We are going to take this fear apart, piece by piece, examine the underlying mechanics, and really just disarm it so that it stops controlling you.
Yeah, understanding the mechanics is half the battle. Once you see the internal wiring of a fear response, it loses its mystique.
Yeah.
It stops being this character flaw and just becomes a biological process that you can actually interrupt.
So let's investigate the origin of that biological process.
Yeah.
Why do we freeze? Because, for the longest time, I assumed it just meant my English wasn't good enough.
Right, that's what everyone thinks.
Yeah. Or that I wasn't studying hard enough. I thought the freeze was just a symptom of my own incompetence.
That is a very common misconception, but it is believed by language psychology experts that the freeze has absolutely nothing to do with your language proficiency.
Wait, really? Nothing at all?
Nothing. It has everything to do with cognitive overload and the brain's evolutionary threat detection system. When you're about to speak in a second language, your brain doesn't just calmly pull up a vocabulary file, it runs a massive, instantaneous background check.
Huh. When you say background check, I picture a security clearance process at an airport.
Yeah.
We talk about evaluating the environment.
Exactly. Well, to build on that airport analogy, imagine airport security trying to process 1,000 passengers at once while a fire alarm is ringing. This all happens in about half a second.
Wow.
Before a single word even comes out of your mouth, your brain scans the environment and asks, is this safe? Will I be laughed at? Will I lose my professional credibility if I sound foolish right now? Does my accent sound uneducated to this native speaker?
That is an overwhelming amount of computation for half a second. It's exhausting just hearing it.
And that is only the social and emotional side. Simultaneously, the language center of your brain, specifically the Broca's area, is trying to conceptualize a thought, translate it from your native language, build a culturally appropriate sentence, and check all those complex grammar rules you've memorized.
Oh, man.
It is simply too many jobs for one single cognitive moment.
Which means the system just crashes. The brain basically overloads, throws its hands up, and pulls the plug on the whole operation.
The mechanism behind that crash is fascinating, actually. The physical body reacts before the cognitive part of your brain even finishes processing the thought. The amygdala, which acts as the fear and alarm center of your brain, detects all that social pressure and sounds a massive alarm.
So it's a physical response first.
Yes. It floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart speeds up, your palms might get sweaty, your breathing gets shallow. You feel this intense, very real physical reaction, and you haven't even said hello yet.
It's treating a Tuesday morning status meeting like a tiger attack. It feels like a high-stakes social test, not just a casual sentence.
Well, with your nervous system, a threat to your social standing in a group feels functionally identical to a physical threat. Evolutionary biology tells us that thousands of years ago, if you were rejected by your social group and cast out of the tribe, you wouldn't survive the winter.
Oh, wow.
So we are hardwired to view social judgment as a matter of literal life and death.
So to navigate this, we really need to understand the vocabulary of this fear. And there's a great C1 level word that perfectly captures what the brain is doing in that half second, which is anticipate.
Anticipate is the perfect term here. In a general sense, to anticipate means to expect something beforehand, to prepare for it. But in the context of language anxiety, your brain begins to anticipate embarrassment or rejection long before any real danger occurs.
Right. It is projecting a future failure that hasn't actually materialized. You are bracing for an impact when there isn't even a car on the road.
That is the tragedy of it. The brain's predictive machinery just goes into overdrive. Like a professional might say, the company anticipated a drop in sales, so they adjusted the budget. They are acting on a logical prediction.
Makes sense.
But for our language learners, the dynamic looks more like this. Because he anticipated making a grammar mistake, his vocal cords tightened before the negotiation even began.
And when you anticipate that worst-case scenario, it leads directly into a very common physical and verbal reaction. Which brings us to a highly relevant phrasal verb, which is to clam up.
Clamming up is the ultimate physiological freeze response.
Yeah, when someone clams up, they suddenly become completely silent because of intense fear, nervousness, or embarrassment. The throat tightens, the jaw locks, and the words just vanish. A relatable situation for many listeners might be, I had all my data prepared for the presentation, but when the CEO actually asked me to explain the discrepancies, I just clammed up.
The blood literally rushes away from the prefrontal cortex, the logical language-producing part of the brain, and it goes to your muscles so you can run away. That is why you literally cannot find the words. The filing cabinet has been locked by your own nervous system.
So your brain genuinely thinks you're in physical danger when you attempt to speak, causing you to clam up. But what happens when you start hallucinating danger that isn't even there? We'll uncover that right after this.
Yeah, that concept of hallucinating danger is crucial because it shifts the focus from our internal biology to how we view the people we're talking to. We often project our internal chaos onto the external world.
Explain this hallucinating judgment idea to me, because it sounds a bit extreme. I mean, I know I'm anxious, but I'm not seeing ghosts in the boardroom.
You aren't seeing ghosts, but you are very likely seeing judgment where absolutely none exists. When we are in that heightened, cortisol-soaked state of fear, our perception of reality becomes warped. We project our own insecurities onto the faces of the people listening to us. This relies heavily on a state of being self-conscious.
Ugh. That is a state I know all too well.
Being self-conscious in a psychological context means being intensely, uncomfortably aware of yourself, your actions, or your appearance. It is a hyper-focus inward. In language learning, it means you are monitoring every single syllable.
Right.
You are acutely aware of the slight accent you have, the tiny pause you take to find a preposition, or the fact that you use the simple past instead of the present perfect.
It's as if you have split into two people. Like one person is trying to speak, and the other person is standing right next to you with a clipboard, aggressively critiquing every single breath you take.
That dual processing just drains your mental energy. And because you are being hypercritical of yourself with that imaginary clipboard, you automatically assume the listener is doing the exact same thing. Which introduces our next C1 word, misinterpret.
Ah, yes. To misinterpret means to understand a situation, an action, or a statement the wrong way. It's a failure of perception.
If we look at the mechanics of face-to-face communication, language learners constantly misinterpret the facial expressions of their conversation partners. I mean, imagine you are speaking English, pitching an idea to a colleague, and you look over to see them with a deeply furrowed brow, narrowed eyes, and a very intense, tight mouth.
My self-conscious brain immediately screams, "They are judging my accent. They think my vocabulary is rudimentary. I sound incompetent."
Exactly. When in reality, their expression might have absolutely nothing to do with your English.
Wait, really? What else could it be?
In reality, they are likely just exhibiting what psychologists call a serious listening face. When people concentrate deeply to absorb complex information, their facial muscles naturally tense up. Maybe they are profoundly engaged with the brilliance of your strategic idea.
Oh, that's a nice thought.
Or, to be even more mundane, maybe they are just sleep-deprived. Maybe they are stressed about an impending deadline, or they have a headache, or they are just hungry. We misinterpret a cognitively loaded face as a judging face.
That reframing is incredibly relieving. The realization that they aren't mentally grading my grammar, they might just need a cup of coffee.
Yes.
But the trap here is how we respond to that misinterpretation. When we think we are being judged, we tend to choose the path of least resistance. We choose silence.
Silence is the most seductive trap in language learning.
It offers immediate relief. If I stay silent during the conference call, I don't conjugate a verb incorrectly. No mistake means no imaginary judgment, which means no embarrassment. Silence acts as a perfect shield today.
But the psychological tax you pay for that silence is enormous. By avoiding the situation, you are actively teaching your amygdala that speaking is, in fact, a dangerous activity that must be avoided tomorrow.
It creates a powerful, self-reinforcing feedback loop. The avoidance validates the fear.
Precisely.
Which perfectly illustrates our second phrasal verb for this deep dive, to fall back on. When you fall back on something, you use it for help or protection when other plans have failed, or when you find yourself in a highly stressful situation. It implies resorting to a backup plan.
For instance, a company might say, when the new software system crashed, they had to fall back on the old paper filing system.
Right.
In our context, we can say, when the fear of judgment becomes too overwhelming, language learners tend to fall back on silence. Or, if I lose my train of thought in English, I fall back on smiling and nodding so no one notices.
It becomes the safety net we rely on. But relying on silence guarantees that your speaking skills will stagnate. You cannot grow while you are hiding.
Growth requires friction, but it requires manageable friction.
Speaking of manageable friction, we are right at the 10-minute mark. If you are having aha moments right now, if you are recognizing your own habits in this breakdown, please take a second to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to keep growing your skills. Your support directly fuels our ability to keep bringing you these deep dives.
Now, to break that ingrained habit of falling back on silence, we have to start dismantling the fear. You cannot leap from being a silent participant in meetings to delivering a 45-minute keynote address in a second language. That would overload the system again. We need to implement low-stakes practice.
The concept of low-stakes practice is brilliant because it lowers the anticipated threat level. And what is the most universally accepted, culturally safe, low-stakes topic in the world?
Weather small talk.
The weather. It is the great global equalizer. Nobody is going to judge your intellectual capacity based on an observation about the rain. So we are going to do a quick interactive role play right now for the listener. We want to help you physically break the silence in your environment today.
Yes, this is so important.
We have prepared 3 distinct, natural-sounding B2 level weather phrases. I'll say the phrase, and then we will just leave a few seconds of pure silence so that you, yes, you, wherever you are listening right now, can repeat the phrase out loud to master the rhythm and muscle memory.
This kind of repetition is essential for bridging the gap between passive understanding and active production. Let's begin. Here is the first phrase, which is incredibly natural for a rainy day. Notice the connected speech.
Okay, here we go. It's really pouring down out there, isn't it? Go ahead and say it now. We'll wait.
Excellent. I want you to pay attention to how the intonation drops slightly at the end of that tag question. Isn't it? You aren't genuinely asking a question. You are inviting agreement.
Let's try second one, which is perfect for expressing pleasant surprise when the weather is unexpectedly nice. Ready? We couldn't have asked for better weather today. Your turn.
Very smooth. That structure, couldn't have asked for, is a fantastic B2 chunk that really demonstrates fluency.
And here's a third one. A highly versatile conversation starter when the seasons are slowly transitioning. It looks like it's finally starting to warm up. Go ahead.
Beautifully done. The simple act of speaking those sentences aloud to yourself, feeling the resonance in your chest, hearing your own voice produce the sounds, it is the vital first step in retraining your nervous system to accept English as a safe activity.
Now that we've physically broken the silence, how do you actually convince your pounding heart and racing mind to calm down mid-sentence when the stakes are higher than the weather? The biological answer to that panic is literally located in your throat. We'll explore the cure right after this.
The transition from understanding the theory of fear to actively managing it in the moment brings us to the concept of vocal pacing and what psychologists call gentle disobedience.
I really need to dig into this because knowing why the fire alarm is ringing doesn't actually put out the fire. If I am in a board meeting and my amygdala is screaming that I am in danger, Intellectually telling myself it's just a misinterpretation of a serious listening face doesn't stop my hands from shaking. What is the actual mechanical intervention that stops the freeze while I am talking?
The intervention is gentle disobedience. You do not try to fight the fear with aggression. You don't yell at yourself internally to, just be confident.
Because that never works.
Never. Instead, you gently disobey the nervous system's command to shut down and hide. You provide the brain with new evidence that speaking is safe by doing it in incredibly small doses.
What does a small dose look like in a professional setting?
It might mean sending a 15-second voice note to a trusted colleague instead of typing an email. It might mean asking one clarifying question in a massive Zoom meeting and then immediately muting your microphone.
Okay, I see.
It is one small, deliberate act of vocalization where the world doesn't end, the sky doesn't fall, and nobody laughs.
You are essentially building a portfolio of positive evidence to show your amygdala.
Precisely. But the true biological hack, the way you deliver that small dose, is all about vocal pacing, the speed and rhythm at which you allow the words to leave your mouth.
Because when we are terrified, our instinct is to rush. We want to get the English out of our mouths as fast as humanly possible so we can stop being the center of attention.
And that rushing is highly destructive. What is critical to understand here is that physiological tension is incredibly contagious. If you walk into a meeting room and begin speaking in a rapid-fire, nervous, high-pitched voice without taking breaths, you will unconsciously transmit that anxiety to everyone listening to you.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Their mirror neurons will fire, and they will physically tense up in response to your erratic pacing.
And then, because they look tense and uncomfortable, my self-conscious brain misinterprets their tension as judgment of my English, which makes me panic even more. It's a brutal, self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is a vicious loop. But the beauty of the human nervous system is that the reverse is also profoundly true. Slowing down your voice on purpose acts as a manual override for your biology.
A manual override.
Yes. By deliberately forcing a slower speaking pace, you naturally deepen your breathing. This stimulates the vagus nerve, which sends a direct signal to the brain that the environment is safe, actively lowering your heart rate and suppressing the cortisol release.
So by controlling the physical output, like the speed of the words, you can actually reverse engineer a state of mental calm. And I imagine that calmness is also contagious to the room.
It absolutely is. When you speak slowly and deliberately with intentional pauses, the listeners relax, they settle back into their chairs, their faces soften, and when you see those softened faces, your brain registers safety.
This connects to an analogy about confidence that completely changed my perspective. People constantly give the terrible advice to just be confident when speaking a language.
The worst advice.
Right. But you cannot simply flip a switch and manifest confidence out of thin air when your heart is beating at 120 beats per minute. Confidence isn't a prerequisite, it's a byproduct. I like to think of confidence as a slow friend who is always late to the party.
That is a remarkable way to conceptualize it. You do not need to wait for the feeling of confidence to arrive before you start speaking.
Exactly. You just start the conversation without them using a slow, deliberate voice. You fake the physiological symptoms of calm. And if you keep the pace steady, eventually, a few minutes into the conversation, that slow friend named confidence walks through the door and joins you.
You lead with the behavior, and the emotion follows. This dynamic brings us to our third phrasal verb, which is highly useful in analytical discussions, and that's to boil down to.
To boil down to. The imagery here is great. Imagine boiling a massive pot of broth for hours and hours, evaporating all the excess water, until only the most flavorful, concentrated essential reduction is left at the bottom of the pan. To boil down to means to identify the main reason for a complex situation, or the most essential fundamental element of a problem.
So if we synthesize everything we just discussed about biology, pacing, and fear, we can say, when you analyze all the complex strategies for overcoming language anxiety, it really boils down to controlling your speaking pace.
It is the fundamental core. Another example might be, the executives argued for hours about the supply chain, but the company's problems all boil down to a lack of communication between departments. You strip away the noise to find the root.
And when you slow your pace, you treat the root cause of the panic.
So a slow, deliberate voice is a powerful biological tool. But what words should you actually use when you slow down? If you believe that you need to use massive, academic, highly complex vocabulary to sound intelligent in English, you are falling into a dangerous trap. We will destroy that myth next.
That brings us to navigating what I like to call the business fog, the myth that complexity equals competence.
I have a confession to make here. I am terribly guilty of this.
Oh, we all are.
When I first started working in international environments, I felt this overwhelming constant pressure to prove that my English was advanced. I wanted everyone to know I was a C1 speaker, so I would actively choose the most complicated multi-syllable words I could think of.
It is an incredibly common defense mechanism. You use vocabulary as armor to protect yourself from being seen as inadequate. What did that sound like in practice?
Oh, it was awful. Instead of looking at my team and saying something clear like, hey, we need to come up with a better plan, I would construct this monstrous sentence. I would say, we must strategically optimize our synergistic approach to navigate the current paradigm.
Wow. That is physically painful to listen to. It sounds like a corporate buzzword generator.
It really does. And the worst part was, about halfway through saying synergistic approach, my brain would completely freeze. I would lose track of the complex grammar required to hold all those giant nouns and adverbs together, and I would just stumble into an awkward silence.
And that phenomenon is exactly what we mean by business fog. You are generating a thick, impenetrable fog of complex vocabulary that completely obscures your actual underlying message. Many language learners operate under the false assumption that simple, clear English is weak or elementary English. They think if they use B1 words, people will treat them like a beginner.
But the reality of effective communication is the exact opposite. Simple is not weak. Simple is sharp, strong, and highly professional. Simple English cuts through the noise.
I often think of language as a tool, like a knife. A simple, well-maintained chef's knife is clean, balanced, and cuts perfectly. But learners often try to use a knife that has a bunch of heavy jewels glued to the handle and unnecessary spikes on the blade.
Right.
It might look fancy, but it is clumsy, heavy, and incredibly difficult to maneuver under pressure.
When you attempt to wield big words that you haven't fully mastered, it actually damages your credibility. It makes you sound less confident because the listener can intuitively hear the cognitive strain in your voice as you struggle to manage the heavy vocabulary.
The cognitive load of trying to sound smart overrides your ability to be clear.
The analogy that really cemented this for me is thinking of big, complex words as heavy, antique furniture in a room.
Walk us through that visual.
When you are totally relaxed, fluent, and among close friends, when your mental room is spacious, bright, and expansive, you can easily navigate around heavy, complex vocabulary. You can use idioms and specialized jargon without tripping.
Sure, because you aren't stressed.
But when the amygdala fires and you get nervous, your mental space violently shrinks. It becomes a very tiny, cramped, panicked room. If you stubbornly try to stuff giant, heavy mahogany words into that tiny space, you just keep bumping your shins into them. You trip over the clauses. In moments of high pressure, it is vastly superior to empty the room and rely on simple, lightweight, modular words that you can move around easily.
That is a brilliant way to visualize cognitive capacity. You have to match your vocabulary weight to your available mental space. And this ties in seamlessly with our fourth phrasal verb, which is to get across.
To get across is essential for this mindset shift. It means to successfully communicate an idea, a concept, or a message so that the other people fully understand it. It focuses entirely on the transmission of meaning, not the decoration of the words.
The ultimate objective of speaking English in a professional or daily context is not to perform a vocabulary test for your colleagues. It is to get your point across. For instance, I intentionally used simple, direct words, but I managed to get my message across perfectly, and the team understood the goal.
Conversely, you might say he has an incredibly advanced vocabulary, but he is so nervous that he has trouble getting his ideas across in client meetings. The entire focus shifts away from performative intelligence and toward genuine connection and clarity.
Simple, lightweight words are undeniably the best vehicle to get your ideas across when the pressure is high.
So we've established that simple words are great. But what happens if the pressure is so intense that you still completely blank out? You've slowed down, you're trying to be simple, but you have absolutely nothing to say. There's a psychological triple win trick that immediately buys you time and actually makes the other person like you more. We're diving into that next.
This brings us to the concept of the pressure valve, utilizing questions, and the linguistic technique of chunking.
Let's set the scene. I am in that high-stakes meeting. I have successfully slowed my voice down. I am avoiding the heavy furniture of corporate jargon. But then a senior manager turns to me and asks a highly specific, direct question. The background check in my brain fails, the alarm sounds, and my mind goes entirely, terrifyingly blank. The room is quiet. What is the emergency lever I can pull in that exact second?
The emergency lever is remarkably elegant in its simplicity. You ask a question back.
Wait, you just answer a question with another question. Doesn't that sound evasive?
It depends entirely on the delivery. You don't do it defensively. You use targeted questions as a pressure valve to release the immediate tension in your mind. If a stakeholder says, "What is your long-term strategy for capturing the European market?" and you freeze, you do not force an answer.
Okay, so what do I do?
You lean in and say, that is a crucial area to focus on. Before I outline the steps, what specific growth metrics are you most concerned with right now? Or, even simpler, could you elaborate a bit more on the specific challenges you foresee?
How does redirecting the conversation actually help my brain recover?
It initiates what we call a triple win. First, it instantly and effectively removes the spotlight from you. The immense pressure to produce a flawless C1 level monologue is gone.
Which is a huge relief.
Second, while they are answering your clarifying question, it buys your prefrontal cortex precious seconds to lower the cortisol levels and begin assembling your thoughts. You get time to breathe. And third, on a psychological level, it makes the person asking the question feel incredibly valued and respected.
That plays right into human nature. People inherently love to talk about their own perspectives and ideas.
Absolutely. It triggers a dopamine release in their brain. By asking a thoughtful question, you transform yourself from a panicked presenter into an engaged, curious collaborator. You look completely in control of the interaction.
Okay, so pulling the pressure valve buys me time and goodwill. But eventually they will stop talking, and I do actually have to speak. And this is where I frequently fall into my second major trap, which is the giant sentence.
The paralyzing trap of perfectionism.
Yes. I will sit there while they're talking and try to engineer a massive, grammatically flawless, multi-clause sentence in my head before I even dare to open my mouth. I want it to be perfect, but by the time I reach the end of the sentence in my mind, I have completely forgotten the beginning.
That is a textbook example of exceeding your working memory capacity. The brain can only hold so much new information at once. To fix this overload, we rely on a critical C1 level linguistic strategy utilizing a chunk.
A chunk. As a noun, a chunk just means a thick, solid piece of something, like a chunk of ice falling off a glacier or a chunk of rock.
Precisely. But in linguistics and cognitive psychology, a chunk refers to a small, manageable piece of language, like a short phrase, a fixed collocation, or a brief clause. Instead of attempting to architect a giant, complex sentence all at once, you need to practice the art of chunking your speech.
Let's unpack this concept with a visual analogy. Chunking your speech is exactly like using stepping stones to cross a fast-moving river.
That is a perfect visualization for cognitive load.
When you are standing on the bank trying to cross a river, you do not need to build a massive, heavy, perfectly engineered steel bridge before you take your first step. Trying to build that bridge takes too much time, exhausts all your energy, and leaves you standing on the edge forever.
Right.
You just need to find the very next stepping stone. You step onto it, you pause, you find your balance, you look down at the water, and then you simply find the next stone.
And in spoken English, those stepping stones are short, punchy chunks of information separated by deliberate pauses.
Let's give the listener a highly practical example of this. Let's take a heavy, complex B2 or C1 sentence that would typically cause a freeze and break it down into 3 short chunks with pauses.
Okay, imagine you need to deliver this giant sentence to your boss. I wasn't able to complete the comprehensive financial report this morning because the legacy software system unexpectedly crashed while I was in the middle of exporting the quarterly data.
Wow, that sentence is a monster. It has multiple clauses, dependent structures, and heavy vocabulary. If I have any adrenaline in my system, I will definitely get lost in the middle of it, panic, and clam up.
Which is exactly why we abandon the bridge and use the stepping stones. We will break that identical information into 3 manageable chunks. Stone 1, I couldn't finish the report this morning. Then you pause. Stone 2, the software crashed unexpectedly. Pause again. Stone 3, it happened right during the data export.
Wow. The semantic meaning is exactly the same, but the cognitive burden is completely lifted. It feels incredibly light. I couldn't finish the report. Pause. The software crashed. Pause. It happened during the export.
And those micro pauses, the physical space between the stepping stones, are where the magic happens. They give your brain the vital milliseconds it needs to search the archives, find the vocabulary for the next chunk, and form the grammar, all without setting off the amygdala's fear alarm.
So you have slowed your heart rate with your voice, you have swapped the heavy furniture for simple words, and you are stepping stone by stone through your sentences using chunks. But what happens when, despite all of this preparation, you still completely forget a specific word right in the middle of a sentence?
It happens to everyone.
Is the illusion of fluency shattered? Is it game over? Not if you understand the umbrella secret.
This leads us into what is arguably the most liberating part of this entire deep dive, the reality of stumbling, the umbrella secret, and the strategic use of repair phrases.
The umbrella secret is based on a story about the power of being deeply, unapologetically human. Several years ago, I was at a lively dinner party, speaking in my second language. I was the center of attention, telling this highly dramatic, animated story about being caught in a torrential rainstorm in a foreign city.
Okay, high stakes.
And right at the absolute climax of the story, my brain simply deleted the word for umbrella. It was gone.
The central, most critical object of the entire narrative just vanished from your working memory.
Exactly. I experienced total, sudden brain freeze. Now, in the past, I would have panicked. I would have stopped the story, apologized profusely for my inadequate vocabulary, and ruined the momentum. But in that moment, I just laughed, made a frantic motion over my head with my hands, and yelled, the roof on a stick? The thing you hold over your head to stop the water.
A roof on a stick. That is a brilliant, instantaneous circumlocution.
And the reaction was magic. The entire table just erupted in laughter. But the crucial distinction is that they did not laugh at me for failing a vocabulary test. They laughed with me at the absurdity of the description. It actually made the story significantly funnier than if I'd used the correct word.
I love that.
It made the conversation feel more intimate and human. And that is the core secret. Forgetting a word doesn't ruin the conversation. It actually serves as an invitation for the other person to collaborate with you.
It creates an authentic point of connection. Psychologists refer to this as the pratfall effect. People actually find you more likable and competent when you make a small, harmless mistake rather than when you appear flawless. But to embrace this, learners need to internalize a very important C1 phrase, to stumble over words.
To stumble over words.
Think about the physical act of walking. If you stumble on an uneven sidewalk, you trip. You lose your balance for a fraction of a second, but you usually catch yourself, adjust your footing, and keep walking. You don't sit down on the pavement and declare that you can never walk again. To stumble over words means your speech comes out unevenly. You might make small slips, repeat a syllable, or briefly lose your train of thought.
It's the linguistic equivalent of tripping, like saying, or accidentally starting a sentence twice, or using the wrong preposition and quickly correcting it.
Exactly. And here is the absolute truth, backed by extensive linguistic analysis. Native speakers stumble over their own words constantly. It is a fundamental feature of spontaneous speech. Stumbling doesn't mean your English is broken, and it certainly doesn't mean the conversation is ruined. It simply means you are speaking in a real, dynamic, unscripted environment.
Right. There is no invisible teacher hiding in the corner of the room with a red pen, deducting points from your final grade.
Exactly. That realization alone lifts so much weight off the shoulders. But from a practical standpoint, what do you actually say when you find yourself actively stumbling? How do you catch your balance?
You catch your balance by using a specific C1 conversational tool called a repair phrase.
A repair phrase. I like that terminology. It sounds like having a specialized toolkit for fixing a leaky pipe in a house.
That's exactly what it is. A repair phrase is a short, pre-memorized chunk of language that you keep in your back pocket to help you smoothly navigate the conversation when things go wrong. Instead of freezing in terror or apologizing for your English, you deploy a repair phrase to reset the cognitive load.
Give me some high-utility examples of repair phrases that our listeners can start using today.
Well, if you realize you've tangled up a complex explanation, you simply pause and say, let me explain that another way.
Perfect.
If you lose your grammatical structure halfway through, you smile and say, let me try that again. Or if you completely drop a vocabulary word, like your umbrella, you can say, I've lost the exact word, but what I mean is...
Let me try that again. That phrase is incredibly powerful. It acts like a verbal eraser. It grants you immediate permission to just delete the last 5 seconds of awkwardness and start fresh with a new stepping stone.
It demonstrates confidence, not weakness. Now, to cement everything we've discussed today, let's do a rapid-fire mindset shift. We call this exercise, Say It Better. We are going to take the toxic, catastrophic thoughts that trigger the amygdala freeze, and we're going to consciously reframe them using logic.
I am ready. I will give you the negative, fear-based thought, and you give me the psychological reframe. Here's the first one, which I used to think all the time before a presentation. I am definitely going to mess up and embarrass myself in front of everyone.
Okay, reframe. I am currently anticipating embarrassment, which is just a biological warning signal, but it will not necessarily happen. I am in control of my pacing.
That completely neutralizes the threat. Okay, here is the second toxic thought. If I forget an important vocabulary word in this interview, it's over. I will look incredibly stupid and lose the opportunity.
Reframe. If I forget a word, it is a normal part of unscripted conversation. I will calmly use a repair phrase, describe what I mean, and keep moving forward. Perfection is not the goal. Connection is.
This entire mindset shift is fundamentally about building psychological resilience, which brings us perfectly to our final, highly versatile phrasal verb of the day, to brush off.
To brush off. The physical imagery here is very helpful. Imagine you are wearing a dark jacket and you accidentally get a little bit of chalk dust or dirt on the sleeve. You don't throw the jacket away, you just use your hand to quickly, casually sweep the dust away. It's a minor inconvenience, not a disaster. Figuratively, to brush off criticism, a mistake, or an awkward moment means to easily ignore it, refuse to let it affect your confidence, and immediately move on.
So we could say to our listeners, if you forget a word in a high-stakes meeting or use the wrong tense, just brush it off and keep going to the next chunk.
Or, observing a colleague, he made a glaring grammar mistake during the Q&A session, but he just brushed it off with a smile and finished his presentation brilliantly. It means you refuse to dwell on the error. You don't let it anchor you to the past while the conversation moves into the future.
Okay, as we head into the outro, I think it is time to leave our listeners with our final provocative thought to chew on for the rest of the week.
I want you to seriously think about this concept as you go about your interactions. Perfection actually makes people deeply uncomfortable.
Really? We spend so much time striving for it, you'd think it would be the ultimate goal.
It is a false goal. When you speak like a flawless, perfectly programmed, highly academic robot, it creates an unnatural distance between you and the listener. It feels sterile. But when you show a little genuine vulnerability, when you stumble over a tricky word and seamlessly use a repair phrase, or when you laugh at yourself and call an umbrella a roof on a stick, you actually build deeper, more resilient trust with the person listening to you. Your flaws are your connecting points. They are what make you human, approachable, and authentic.
That is a profound shift in perspective. Flaws are connecting points. Now, I promised you a tangible bonus at the end of this deep dive, and here it is. This is a highly specific physiological grounding trick used by psychologists to short-circuit a panic attack.
Ooh, I love this one.
If you are sitting in a meeting or standing at a party and you feel that dreaded freeze coming on, your heart starts racing, your throat tightens, and you feel yourself clamming up, do this immediately. Physically press your toes firmly into the floor inside your shoes.
It sounds unusual, but the neurology behind it is rock solid.
It works through a process called proprioception. It forces your brain to register physical, tactile reality. By sending a strong sensory signal from your feet to your brain, it actively pulls your focus out of the imaginary hallucinated danger in your head and grounds your nervous system firmly in the present safe moment.
Try it next time. Press your toes down hard, take a slow breath to engage the vagus nerve, and speak your first chunk slowly.
We always want to know who our most dedicated, relentless learners are. If you made it this far into the deep dive, if you listened to all the neuroscience and vocabulary, prove it to us. Write, "I am consistent" in the comment box right now. We read every single one of those comments, and it shows us who is really doing the work.
Yes, write, "I am consistent." And while you were there, give us your feedback. What kind of topic do you desperately want us to cover for the next video? Do you want a deep dive on specific pronunciation techniques, more advanced business English idioms, or more language psychology? Let us know in the comments so we can build it for you.
And before they go, let's test their active memory recall.
Time for a quick quiz. Before you click away, what was the specific linguistic term or the visual idiom we used for breaking down a massive, heavy sentence into smaller, manageable pieces so you don't freeze? Write your answer in the comment box right now.
I'll give you a hint. It involves carefully crossing a fast-moving river.
I'll just whisper it. It's chunking or stepping stones. Write it down. If you like this video, get hyped for what's coming next. We have so much incredible high-level content planned for you. And listen closely. If you want to read an amazing article about mastering English and building fluency, go to the description box below. I have provided a specific link. If you subscribe there just once, you will receive a free high-quality article in your email for free every single time we publish.
It is an incredible resource for reinforcing the concepts we discussed today.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you enjoyed this podcast, there are many more podcasts on my channel. Go check them out and binge watch your favorites. Your progress doesn't end here, it's just beginning. Remember, your flaws are your connecting points. Take a breath, find your stepping stones, and we will see you next time.